Welcome to another episode of the AutoFix Advisor Cast with your host, Michael Doherty, sponsored by WorldPack and the WorldPack Training Institute. Be sure to check out worldpack.com for the latest in auto parts, distribution, and WTItraining.com to explore training programs that can and will take your career to the next level. Also, don't forget to mark your calendars for the 2026 WorldPack STX taking place in Washington, D.C. It will be a can't miss event. Service Advisor Nation, welcome to another episode, and I hope that you are doing well. Earlier in my career, and I would say earlier, I would define that by the probably first, second, third year as being a service advisor. And at that point, it was really in the dealership setting. I was working for a Audi dealership at the time in North Carolina, and what I was running into was the technicians were coming back to me after a job was dispatched. And at that time, to be totally honest, I wasn't dispatching like I was or am now working at an independent shop as a service advisor. It was set up way differently, vastly differently. So my primary job was to build and maintain client relationships. And that still is to this day. But when the work order would come to me from the technician, it would already have parts on it that were supplied by the parts department. It would have labor on it supplied by the technician. And then it was my job to call the client and, of course, with using client guided sales, make them understand. And hopefully they, wanted to do some business with us that day or that week or whatever. But I was running into roadblocks with the technicians where after a job was approved, the work order was sent back to the technician. The technician would come up and say, hey, we've got a broken bolt. We've got a tie rod that is seized that we've, got this vehicle on the alignment rack now. Things of that nature that weren't always comfortable to call a client back after recommending work and the client buying work, purchasing work, and then having to call them back and let them know, hey, it's going to be another $200, $300, $400 between parts and labor to do some of these things. And at that point, I had determined that a lot of those things were unfortunately, I believe to be uncontrollable variables, rust, tie rod adjusters. On a lot of the Audis, there was what was called a long bolt, which is at the upper front position and upper rear position control arm assembly. And it kind of slid through that upper arm and made sure that they were, secured. But that bolt was also notorious for not coming out, and the technician would go through several drill bits and on top of additional labor and parts for the client, again, making those phone calls afterwards. So I try to figure out, how can I make those uncontrollable variables controllable variables? And for the ones that were uncontrollable variables, it was focusing on the lesson learned from that first experience or second experience, kind of building in my head, hey, this isn't the first time this happened with this year make and model vehicle, not the second time it happened, not the third time. So I got in the habit of kind of making a mental log, if you would, of which vehicles, and again, this was Audi specific at the time, but this transfers over to very varying makes and models these days. But just at that moment when I was working at the Audi dealer, that's what we worked on was Audi and nothing else. So being in the independent world, we work on a vast variety of other vehicles. But again, focusing on the lesson learned and continuing to grow and make those things controllable variables to a degree. And what I mean by that is, so if we had a vehicle that had pre-existing rust, letting the client know in advance when I'm speaking to them about what's going on with their vehicle, especially if there's suspension work that we're going to be doing, engine work, etc. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I'm sure you're aware, but this vehicle has pre-existing rust, and it is possible that a bolt or bolts or hardware may break. We're not going to use heavy hands going into the repair, but just a heads up, we may be calling you back to let you know there might be some additional work needed if those things don't cooperate and come apart as planned. And also, letting the technician know, hey, before you start this work, could you, start spraying down those bolts, those areas of, we'll call it pre-existing rust, with a penetrating oil, let it sit for a little while, let it soak in, give it the best chance to not have, an issue there. And at the same time, again, uncontrollable and controllable variables, but Again, for me, it was trying to figure out how to take those uncontrollable variables and make them more of a controllable variable so it wasn't a surprise to the client in the write up. And that is years and years of just, again, repeat process. But we can take that knowledge and apply it to, again, other makes and models and vehicles. And I found less unsatisfactory phone calls with the clients if we let them know about it in advance, and that was a good thing. So at the same time, creating opportunities to show them transparency. The clients, tell them in advance things that are going on. And I actually had the conversation with my coworker, other service advisor last week. I said, "Hey, when's the last time we mention to a client proactively, again, doing, creating opportunities, doing a proactive, sunroof drain cleaning?" And she kind of looked at me and she goes, I don't think I've ever done that. And I said, yeah, me either. So we started going back through client service histories for upcoming service reservations that next day, and kind of, looking down the list of what they've been in for before and things like that. And we couldn't find any. So, again, creating opportunities not only for the shop but for the client, because at some point in time, water intrusion is going to happen from debris buildup. Where we live in North Carolina, there's a lot of just things flying around in the air, pine straw, pine leaves, pine cones, all that stuff. But all that debris, just driving, and sometimes a car just even sitting, just builds holes up passageways for water. We find a lot of times when we open the hood of a vehicle, the cowl's just piled with debris. It kind of looks like a mini beaver dam. And, for vehicles that we're going to be doing engine work on anyways, a lot of the BMWs, for valve covers replacement, you got to take the cowl apart to get to the back side of the valve cover where it meets the firewall. We're cleaning that debris out for the client as a courtesy. But if we're not going to be doing engine work, again, making the recommendation, hey, we'd recommend removing this beaver dam to allow water to, drain properly. And, even go to the extent now in the future to recommend, sunroof drain cleanings proactively if they've never done it. Because again, at some point in time, it's going to clog up. When it clogs up, it's an inconvenience. They're getting dripped on, or their feet's getting wet, or the foot's getting wet. The footwell's got standing water in it. Something's going to happen. And also, there's vapor barriers behind doors. That's not, I would say, really proactive. But if you're going to be in the area, doing a window regulator or inner door handle assembly removal, replacement, window motor, etc., being very careful to reinstall the vapor barrier correctly. And if the car is a certain age, I've always used the rule of thumb: if it's more than 8 years old, it's not an expensive part, I'm going to recommend a new vapor barrier to the client. And sometimes we've seen, going into door panels, someone's been in there before, there's missing bolts, somebody has used a 2-part epoxy, somebody's put duct tape over the vapor barrier. I mean, if you've got the ability to, if your point of sale system allows you to take pictures of those things, again, building the storyline, letting the client know, hey, now would be a good time to replace this to prevent X, Y, or Z from happening. So, just stuff like that. So again, taking some of these, what we consider uncontrollable variables, and trying to make them controllable variables. Also, at times when, earlier in my career, when they were uncontrollable variables, trying to, I would say, when I'm on the phone with the client, expressing these things that we've encountered that we didn't know about. Again, building along my career of being a service advisor, when you're speaking to them about that, don't go into it that they're going to be mad at you. Don't go into it that, this is something that, that you've caused. You know, be very clear, be very transparent in what you're explaining to them, and, have confidence at that time, especially because you don't want them thinking that it's something that you caused. And sometimes a client will accuse the shop of breaking apart or whatever. So again, that's where the turning it from an uncontrollable into a controllable variable in the beginning often helps, especially again with suspension work, things of that nature. Letting them know, again, pre-existing rust, anything you see or can remember that might have been an issue on that car, previous vehicle for a client, that could be an issue with this car. Just be upfront about it. And, the calmer you are, the clearer you think. And that comes across the board on everything that you're explaining to a client about their vehicle. The calmer you are, the clearer you think. And as you're talking, you're thinking, and you're also listening. Listening, again, we follow the we got two ears, one mouth. So when the client is talking, listen, but also be thinking about what your response is going to be. And, again, for those uncontrollable variables, focusing on the lesson learned and continue to grow. Again, a lot of it's teamwork. I had a great podcast not too long ago with Chris Cotton, the owner of AutoFix, and we got talking about, the front, the back, the technicians, the service advisors, and he was mentioning to me about he had a technician that wasn't filling out the DVI correctly or at all and sending it back up front to the service advisor, and the service advisor didn't make any adjustments, and that vehicle left without having, a courtesy check or a DVI performed. And the conversation he's having with his coworkers, employees, whatever about that, stop how to prevent that moving forward. And, it comes down to accountability for your team. If a team member, if you see that they forgot a step, reminding them, kicking the ticket back, going and having that conversation. Again, it can be a conversation and not an argument. It's how you present it to one another from a coworker standpoint. Again, if you go back there, yeah, you didn't do this right, it's going to be an argument. If you go back, hey, look, I know you had 8 cars today. I think maybe you missed this one. I think it was, just a mistake. Could you pull the car back in and do the DVI before I call the client? The size of the group doesn't matter that you're working with. The teamwork does. Again, the size of the group doesn't matter. The teamwork does. Cohesion, synergy, working together, communication, comprehension of communication when you're speaking to one another. Again, the understanding, making sure each party knows why of what you're talking about, not just X, Y, Z, and assume that they're going to understand, breaking it down, again, the comprehension of that. But all great things. Also, on the creating opportunities front, a lot of shops have the ability and have local business connections with sublet vendors, painting, wheel repair, windshield repair, things of that nature. And, being the best as you can to your clients as a one-stop shop, I think is very important. It's easy to say, no, we don't do that. But here's who we'd recommend, or just even, no, we don't do that. And some shops don't even give a referral. But if you've got a good relationship with some vendors in the area that perform that work, the best time to make those notations is when the service advisor is doing the vehicle check-in and, you're noting dents, dings, wheel rash, whatever. Again, thinking about, maybe the client isn't aware that you can offer those services for them or have those services done. And again, if you're set up with sublet vendors for wheel repair, if you're going to be doing tire work anyways, and the wheel has to be dismounted, mentioning to the client, hey, are you interested in having that curb rash repaired while we have your vehicle? And here's a price point for that. Excuse me, just gonna grab a drink real quick. If you're doing a walk around and encounter a cracked windshield or impact damage on a windshield, maybe having the conversation with the client, hey, while the vehicle's going to be here for a day or two for some repairs, do you want to get in touch with your insurance company and see if they want to send somebody out to have that replaced while the car's going to be sitting around in the parking lot for a day anyways, or 2 days? Again, maximizing time for them, but also showing them, again, the value in what you're offering them, just because it's something that you normally wouldn't do in-house. If you have sublet vendors, or again, the car's going to be there for a couple of days, things that you might be able to help them with, that will also make their car look better aesthetically. I've had a lot of times where clients ask us if we do paint and body work. We do not do that service. However, there is a great company not too far down the road that does painting repairs, minor body damage. What I mean by that is somebody, backed into a trailer hitch inadvertently, if somebody scraped a curb with their lower front bumper, these are things that they're doing with the body panels still on the car. And it's worked out pretty good over the years. We've had a pretty good relationship with that individual. And again, it's something that if the car's going to be there for a couple of days, looking at it and offering the client the option, if you can, and letting them know you can maybe help them out with that if they're interested. And what I also have found is, for clients that have vehicles that they're just a primary driver and nobody else drives the vehicle, it's astonishing. They are totally unaware of the passenger side of the vehicle. They never go over to it. They never walk around it for the most part. Some of the enthusiasts that have cars do, but 9 times out of 10, people that are one driver vehicles, they do not know really what exists on the passenger side of the car. So again, that's where the pictures, it's important to take pictures at time of vehicle check-in, documentation, wheel rash, dents, dings, a mirror cover being cracked or broken. Again, at time of vehicle check-in to prevent it wasn't like that, which I'm sure every auto shop has had the experience when someone comes to pick up their car, they come back and say, hey, can I borrow you a second? And they point out something on their car and say, well, this wasn't like that. And having the confidence in the conversation, again, not the argument, but the conversation, showing them the picture and the time of that picture taken that, yes, it was pre-existing when the car came in. And hey, if you'd like to, a referral for getting that fixed, or if you want to leave it with us, we can maybe help you facilitate that with a local vendor. Again, having that conversation, again, it builds transparency. You're being honest with them. So, again, just that, again, could be an uncontrollable variable made a controllable variable very quickly. And again, building trust with your client, building value in what your business offers. And again, coming from the mindset of helping the client out, building and retaining client relationships. So, all great things. Also, a quote that I saw the other day that I felt was very important to our industry, and I know it's often easy to forget and maybe not do to, coworkers. I hope no one's doing it to clients, but sometimes coworkers, we tend to have coworkers that get under our skin or poke at us when we're having a bad day. But this quote really resonated. It said, "Treat all people with respect. Don't reserve your best behavior for special occasions." And that is very important. That pertains 100% to our industry, the automotive industry. So again, treat all people with respect. Don't reserve your best behavior for special occasions. So Service Advisor Nation, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for tuning into another episode of the AutoFix Advisor Cast. Again, our great sponsor, Worldpac. Thank you for your partnership. And I hope everybody has a great upcoming week and upcoming holidays to spend with their family as well. We're nearing Thanksgiving over here in North Carolina. And again, great opportunities, make clients happy, value in what you're offering, working with sublet vendors to maybe accommodate some requests for clients that you normally wouldn't do, or offering, them those services that they may not know that you can get done for them if their car's there for a couple of days, maybe waiting on a part, or it's on the lift and you're waiting on a part, etc. But again, really just building that relationship, showing them that you care, and it is going to work out fantastic for you. So again, Service Advisor Nation, this is Michael Doherty signing off for the AutoFix Advisor Cast. Have a great one. Thank you so much. All right.